Welcome, security pros, to another Hacker News webinar. It's great to have all y'all here with us. Benny, David, welcome to the Hacker News webinar series. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
This is going to be an exciting one, folks. We're talking data security posture management today, and Benny's an actual cybersecurity practitioner. So this is going to be unbelievable. We're going to give folks just another about 20 seconds to get into the room, and we're going to kick this one off. We hope to be within the 30 to 35 minute frame for this webinar for all of y'all today. So just so you know, so if you've got back to back after this one, try to see if you can get 5 to 10 more minutes before we get started. Now let's kick off because I know time is sacred. So a few things. Your comments and questions are welcome. I see them all. I'll try to bring as many of those as I can. But if I can't for whatever reason, David is promising to answer every single one of them after this webinar because they're all going to go into his email and he's going to answer them all before he goes home. Right, David?
Exactly. Yep.
Perfect. All right. So let me introduce our esteemed panel today. So at the top of your screen, you'll see Benny Bloch. He's the CISO for Global-e, which is a leading e-commerce enabler that provides a comprehensive cross-border solutions for merchant to sell their products worldwide. He joined after being the deputy CISO at one of Israel's largest banks, Bank Hapoalim, which, by the way, Hapoalim translates to the workers' bank, right?
Yeah.
And led their defense department and anti-fraud unit. And right below Benny, you'll see David Stewart. He is the senior director of product marketing for Sentra. And y'all remember Sentra, we've done a bunch of webinars with the team. So David's first appearance on the webinars. David, welcome to the group. David's a 20-year security industry veteran. He's been in the marketing management positions at companies like Symantec, SourceFire, Cisco, Tenable, and ZeroFox. So David, welcome. And I'm yours truly, the moderator and CISO for the folks over at the Hacker News. So without further ado, David, I'll kick this off to you.
Okay.
And let's start this journey.
Thank you. And welcome, Benny, again. And James, thanks for the introductions. What James didn't mention is also I've been in the data security space for almost 18 months, going on 2 years now in DSPM solutions. So happy to help orchestrate this session today. So cloud data has been exploding. I've seen a lot of change in that 18 months in terms of awareness around solutions for this, but the underlying currents of data democratization, data proliferation, and all that continue. Benny, I've heard you mention probably more than once that these boundaries that are no longer in existence create challenges. Would you elaborate on, what that has meant to the security practice?
The removal of boundaries can be compared to having an apartment in the middle of the city versus having a household in the middle of a field with several acres of land. So in previous days, when you had traditional IT, you knew the boundaries, you knew your organization, you were the one to control the servers, you were the one to control the firewalls. Nothing gets past you without your permission, and you control everything. It's your databases, your servers, your services, everything is yours, and everything is yours to manage and control. Now, once we've moved to the cloud, there are no more boundaries because by design, everything is interconnected. Your data resides on a third-party cloud service provider. You are using SaaS solutions that integrate with your data. And at least from what I see and what I see in the industry is people pretty much feel that they've lost control over the actual boundaries of their defined organization. Because right now, if you have a SaaS solution that integrates with you, question, is this part of your organization or not? So where do you draw the line in terms of responsibility, accountability, or even is this yours to protect? So that's the change, at least that I see and I hear from other CISOs.
Have you seen I'm going to throw a question at that. That you just triggered a thought on? Have you seen a change in the roles of the respective responsible parties that touch data. I'm thinking CISO, privacy, governance, risk management. There's many different roles, right? Is that changed because of this proliferation, or changed because of the cloud?
It evolved. I don't know if it changed, but evolved over the past few years, because traditionally, or at least if you'll take us back, 10 years ago, privacy was the practice of security. So you were the data, I won't say custodian, but you were responsible for the data, and you were responsible for the transfer and movement and storage of data. Now, since then, the entire domain had evolved to the point that usually privacy is in the practice of the legal departments or a dedicated role of a DPO. Now, the transition itself also influenced IT teams. So now most of the organization does not call it IT. It pretty much transitioned to DevOps, because there's no more heavy lifting in terms of cabling and network equipment and spinning off servers and carrying 1U or 4U racks. Now everything is virtual. Everything is theoretically supposed to be simpler, but from security perspective, things got way more complicated.
Makes sense. Can we move to the next slide? So Sentra, obviously a pioneer in the data security posture management space. Tell us a little bit about what got you started there, and even why the need for solutions in this area now with the cloud factors.
So being a 100% cloud-based company, each and every year I sit down with the teams doing a bottom-up and top-down design of our security practices and projects for the next year. So one of the things that we've mapped is the fact that we have zero control, or at least from security perspective, we have zero control over our security posture in the cloud, or control, because it is controlled by a different team, the DevOps, our partners. But again, you want to feel the sense of control. So we've mapped this as a critical project for us. We went ahead and got a CSPM solution to monitor the infrastructure, take some of the control back. So now you can't spin off servers or open new services or conduct any significant changes to the environment without us at least knowing about it. And I won't touch the policy part, but at least we know, we are familiar with the changes and we know their implication. And then it was just the beginning of the entire DSPM market. It hadn't had the name or a clear definition by Gartner as to what that is. But as I said, we were approached by Sentra, and they said, listen, it's great that you are monitoring your infrastructure, but what about your data? And it made sense, because it doesn't matter truly, or at least for me, it doesn't matter how the infrastructure works. It's more towards my goal in defense is my data. That's the first thing I'm protecting. And having a system that's dedicated to monitor the data and not how the infrastructure influences the data, but the data movement itself and where it resides and how it's controlled. So that's the part that made me choose additionally a DSPM solution to add to the security stack to monitor my pride possessions, my defense goals.
Has it helped you make those other tools in your stack more effective, or are you be able to better, optimize those solutions? I'm curious.
It's always an ecosystem with security tools. So right now, as a CISO, you need to operate hundreds of tools, thousands of tools. Because again, it came to be more complicated. So you have a tool for pretty pretty much each and every risk that you have. Now, they all contribute to each other. So, for example, if you know your security posture, your data security posture, you are more willing to take risks that are coming from other domains. Because you know, okay, this server has a vulnerability. Okay, not that bad. It's far away enough from my data. So even if it will take few more days to patch the server, let it be. It doesn't hold any significant data, or it cannot access my data.
That totally makes sense. So you're able to use the information you mine from the data security, the DSPM solution, to make better decisions about what to prioritize in the CSPM and your other controls, it sounds like.
Exactly.
So
it allows me, for example, the simplest thing is I'm willing to take more risks in a lower environment because I can guarantee it does not hold any significant data, any true data. I know my controls, I know my processes. I know that by definition, you cannot copy any sensitive data to the test environment. But now I have a tool to monitor for it and to guarantee that my controls are working.
So Benny, David, I think, our audience here in the comments, I'm seeing some confusion as we talk about DSPM and CSPM and kind of how they're different. Would one of you guys want to tackle, or both of you maybe want to tackle kind of a general audience question here around the difference between both?
Sure. I'll give my quick answer and let Benny add to it, please. If you think of what a CSPM, and by the way, many of our customers have implemented CSPMs already that, came into the market a little before DSPM. So it's not terribly uncommon that they might have that solution. It really identifies infrastructure misconfigurations and vulnerabilities and for cloud environments. And that's the strength of it. However, those protections don't travel with the data, I think, as Benny indicated. So when data moves around the environment, you need to have those same consistent controls everywhere. And as we all know, data scientists and developers are constantly making copies of data, moving data around. And so that's where these exposures happen. DSPM is agnostic to that infrastructure. It doesn't, it does its job of identifying sensitive data and alerting you to any policy violations, regardless of where the data travels or where it lives. I think that's the real strength of it. The two work side by side and hand in hand. They're complementary to each other. Benny, anything
Benny,
I
do you
missed on
want
that?
to add to that, kind of the difference between CSPM and DSPM for you?
For me, as I said, that one of them controls or provides me control over the traditional IT, the configuration of the cloud, the different services. Now it became more complicated with microservices and Lambda functions, and it's a challenging, highly complex world. And CSPM covers pretty much the actual infrastructure, the way that your systems are configured. And that's great, and that's a major control that you have to have. But that's the big but. Every CISO has thousands of vulnerabilities. That's part of life. Mm-hmm. And you're on a constant mission to patch as much as you can and fix, but you are always carrying this load that you need to deal with and you need to manage on a daily basis. And that's CSPM. That's CSPM life. If you're opening your CSPM and everything's green, either you're misconfigured or you're probably connected to the wrong environment and not your real one. And that's okay. That's the situation in all organizations. Now, with data security management, that's a whole different story. You won't be able, or at least you have low risk acceptance when it comes to data, because that's your goal. That's why you're there. And at least for me, I'm not willing to take any risks when it comes to data.
Yeah, I mean, you're risk taking with data is a slippery slope, right, Benny? I think for a lot of practitioners, we live in I know me as a CISO as well. Like I live in a world where data on risk is something very, very different from potentially other risks in the business. Talk a little bit, if you don't mind, Benny, kind of, one of the biggest challenges and kind of stuff I see in the comments is around deployment, right? You and I both know that it's not always easy to deploy security tools. It's not, it's complex, it's costly a lot of times. Uh, Sometimes it's never what we think it really is, right? In all of our planning, because there's stuff you never plan for. Talk a little bit about your deployment with our friends at Sentra, and what was that like for you and your team?
So yeah, implementing security tools and all, it's not only security but also IT tools, is always you need a certain amount of pray and believe, because theoretically everything is easy. Yeah, you need to cross your fingers. In PowerPoint, everything works, everything interconnects, and everyone promises you, yeah, that's a quick connection, and yeah, everything is always delightful and what's not. But when it boils down to implement something, that will be a hustle, and you will probably get sideswiped by things that you haven't thought of. And of course, you need to collaborate with your IT and other departments, so you need to be on their favorite side. At least from my experience with Sentra, that was one of the smoothest integrations that we've had. Just because the fact that they are not intrusive. So you're connecting them to your accounts. That's not intrusive. You're installing a Sentinel or any agent, call it any way you want, but you are installing a capability inside your VPC, and that's pretty much it. You're not looking at some highly complex integration where you need to gain access to your greatest secrets, or God forbid, to integrate with your KMS. No, you pretty much provide the account details. You install the agent or tenant, Sentinel, whatever they call it. You install the thingy in your VPC, and you start to see insights. Now, of course, as in every system, you need to tweak some things, because maybe it flagged data as being sensitive, and it's not a sensitive data. We're not sensitive to you. We're not sensitive by law. It doesn't matter. But there are some tweaks and changes, but they are very minor. So again, one of the smoothest integrations that I've had.
And I assume, Benny, you would agree that as data moves and gets copied and shared and what have you, one of the advantages of connectorless architecture is that there's very minimal ongoing maintenance, ongoing administration, right? You're not constantly reconfiguring those connectors.
Yeah, because you're looking at your entire tenant or your entire VPC or account, and that's it. So you can move the data as much as you want, as long as you're playing inside your playing field, inside your slightly defined cloud environment. And even if you move the data from one cloud to another, as long as they're both connected to your DSPM solution, you can continue seeing this transition, this data movement.
James, any other audience questions?
Not at the moment. I think we can get to a few of those here in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Do you want me to move to the next slide? And
yeah, go ahead. That'd be great.
Brilliant. Go ahead.
So we see, and I think you kind of hit on this, implementation is key, as is integration with existing tools and systems, right? Because a lot of these are in place. You've got the CSPM, CNAPs, and other network and cloud configuration monitoring tools out there. You've got all kinds of risk management tools. Catalogs for data inventory is a common use case that we see. Customers want to keep their data about, their metadata about their data accurate and up to date, and find that manual processes and tracking it has become impossible given the cloud aspects. And of course other tools as well. So just curious, were there a particular integration, Benny, that helped you, or are you looking forward to any of these integrations? I'm kind of curious what, how important was this in both your decisioning and the implementation?
Some of those tools we do have, some of them we try to avoid deliberately. Again, it's an ecosystem, protection umbrella, you can call it. It's an ecosystem of tools that you operate. Again, some of them you install because you need to follow regulation. Some of them you implement because you truly believe in their control over the risk. So again, it's all complementing each other. It's not one instead of the another. You need to have them all eventually, at least have all capabilities. Now, question is, how do you solve how do you approach your stack? So which one of them you want to implement first? Which one of them you're having the same capability from a different tool, and you don't need a dedicated tool for it? But bottom line, as a CISO, you need to look at all of those domains, and you need to cover all of them.
Did you consider the cloud native tools like Macy, Purview, those types of tools? Or is that something you bypassed altogether? Kind of curious.
It's nice to have a tool that's, let's call it, naturally integrated to your cloud provider or cloud provider specific. But in terms of operation and control, that will be a hassle. So if you have more than one cloud, and you probably have, even if you are not aware of it, most likely you have more than one cloud. Now, using a tool that's cloud specific won't give you the coverage when data is being transformed between clouds. And also, you need to operate two tools instead of one, or three tools if you have, for example, a tenant in each and every one of the, let's say, the large cloud environments. If you have GCP, Azure, and AWS, you're looking at three different tools. Now, each one of them is probably the best for its environment, theoretically. I can argue the other way around, but so each one of them is cloud specific, and your coverage of the organization is cross-cloud. So there won't be as useful as having a one place to look at.
Yeah, one of our integration, I think I would largely agree from what we see too, multi-cloud and hybrid environments, including even on-prem, are the model, right? Majority of companies are implementing that way. So I think you make a really good point about ease of management if you have a singular tool that cuts across them. But we also have done some deep integration, like with Microsoft, where we can do, inspect MIP encrypted documents and tag MIP labeling, or report that something that should be secured or encrypted isn't tagged with the Microsoft Information Protocol label. So that level of deep integration with Microsoft, I think, is a good example of making those tools work even better, right? And be more complete in the coverage they're providing.
Yeah, also, if you're looking at Microsoft, their tools are amazing. I truly love their environment. I'm a Microsoft guy from the get-go. But they are looking at their tools, at their solutions, as they were designed to be used.
Yeah.
So if you are, I would say, misconfigured, but didn't take the most advantage of their capabilities, you will miss something. So, for example, if you misconfigured your data protection portion of Azure, so if you're mistagging data, no tool from their stack will be able to actually tell you, hey, listen, you are missing something. No, the document was not tagged, so for them, it's not sensitive. And when you have a dedicated tool that's outside of Microsoft's stack or natural stack, the tool is not looking at the tags. It looks at the actual data inside or the metadata that's attached. So I truly believe, again, it's nice having something that's best of brand, but throughout the years, it's been proven that the best of breed is probably gives you a better coverage.
Excellent.
You know, when we so Benny, I want to ask you a question here, because I think we're nearing the end. We're about 26 minutes in. I think we've got 5, maybe 10 more minutes, Dave. Fair? And I'll ask you this. So I'm thinking about DSPM, right? As a CISO, what would you tell me? What advice would you tell me now, knowing what you've gone through?
Start early. Even prioritize DSPM over other projects, because it will give you insights as to which other tools you need. It will give you a clear vision as to how your data is looking, and how your data is controlled inside the organization. You will be able to spot locations or repositories of data that you weren't fully aware of, and that will give you the tools and insights to better plan the implementation of other tools.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you, Benny, is you not only use this for data security, you also use it for data visibility, and that you're really using DSPM as a general. I almost bumped my water, and you guys would have heard just a huge splash here. You know, talk with your hands; it works.
Cheers.
But you really look at this kind of, if we look at all 4 boxes that are on our screen now, you're looking at it from a risk and threat mitigation, from a DLP perspective, from a data governance and data access governance. So let's talk a little bit about data access, because I think, identity is the new perimeter. It's very, very common. When you look at data access governance, what are some of your best practices around deploying the tool around data access governance?
If you know where your data resides, you know which permissions do you need to actually access it, or what are your routes to access the data. And this transitions as to how do you control the permissions. It's not only about controlling permissions, and I'm a huge lover of no permissions to anyone. Let's block everything and let's restrict as much as possible, and all permissions are temporary, etc. That's nice, but you're not accessing only through the officially controlled paths. You can also access data via ODBC, and that requires a different identity management solution. And you have data that resides on S3 buckets, which is usually controlled via the IAM roles. So I'm looking at the Okta logo, and it's all great, but again, you need to manage identities in several systems. No matter how good your implementation of IDM is, you always have this one path, one channel that requires different attention. Now, when you're looking at your data, at least you know where it is and where are your security gates to access it.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Sorry, I was just going to one quick comment on top of that, is that some of the most active data users, developers, data scientists also have extensive permissions, right?
By design.
Yeah, and so they're some of the most, I'd hate to say it, but guilty parties in terms of moving data and then moving it in areas that may not be as strongly protected as your production versions. So
that's awesome. David, anything else, or can we move to audience questions?
let's go to audience questions.
Lovely, because this audience has been very, very active, as is typical for us here at the Hacker News.
Sure.
I like to say we have the most technical and best looking audience on the planet, but bias a little bit. But,
It's called the Hacker News for a reason.
Yeah, it's called the Hacker News for a reason. So Kevin's got a question here about DSPM. Does the DSPM extract data to scan it? And wouldn't that be a security risk?
That's a question for me or Dave? Who wants to
Either
answer?
one of you.
Take it, Benny, and then I'll add too.
So in theory, no, the data is not being truly extracted. So it's a tenant inside your environment, and they are looking mainly at the metadata. So no, they're not touching your data by design. And even if they were, at least it's your tools who touch it. And it's a better situation versus having someone else touching your data. But no, the data is not accessed directly. It's mainly the metadata.
Yeah, and it's also largely autonomous, meaning that it's non-intrusive. It does take snapshots of data. It keeps it in your cloud environment to do the scan and the sensitivity tagging and all that, so that there's no production performance impact in or limits to data that may be being utilized at the same time. For on-prem, we have an agent that installs in the customer environment and does take a copy and snapshot and keeps it in their cloud environment to do the analysis scanning on it, and then immediately destroys that. So again, no data ever leaves the customer environment and comes to Sentra. Only the metadata, so we can do the reporting on it and tell you what kind of inventory you have and the sensitivity and all that.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. Great question from Kevin. This one is coming from Andrea, asking, wouldn't this dramatically increase her cloud spend using a tool like Sentra? I think I'm going to.
I got some data on that, but I'm curious, Benny, what's been your experience so far?
The short answer is everything you do in the cloud costs money. That's part of their business model. But no, it doesn't have any implications in terms of cost, as again, they're looking at snapshots, and that's it. So you're not spinning off new servers or opening new outstanding buckets or anything. No, you just simply either look at the metadata or taking snapshots. But it is important to clearly define the data retention for deleted snapshots.
No, that totally makes sense. I think across the board in our customer base, like Benny said, there's obviously a cost to any cloud compute or cloud storage aspect. Our initial scans are thorough and comprehensive and can take days to complete, depending on if you have hundreds of petabytes. That's going to definitely take a period of time. After that, though, we typically go to differential scanning, so we're not incurring nearly that large a cloud cost ongoing. And I've seen that some solutions out there are just regularly doing complete scans, and so they're incurring a much higher cloud cost because of that. Differential scanning, and because we live in the customer environment, also has the advantage of we see change more instantaneously, right? And so we can keep your inventory, like I said, the data catalog, fresh, which is important if you're making access decisions and risk policy compliance decisions. You want to always have essentially a ready version of your inventory, and so we accomplish that without incurring huge expense on the cloud side.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to both Benny and David. This has been awesome. I appreciate your time today. I want to thank our amazing audience here at the Hacker News for joining another amazing webinar. And if you see that QR code that's right there, outside of putting malware on all of your devices when you downloaded it, it also lets you test out and see if you're ready for DSPM in your organization. So I suggest you snapshot that and let our friends over at Sentra know that you're ready to start that journey or ready to start having the conversation around the journey. And they'll be happy to kind of walk you through that process. David, Benny, thank you so much for being part of the
Thank you.
Hacker News webinar series. For everyone here, please make sure to let us know if there's other topics you want to hear from. Going to the hackernews.com/webinars will let us know what you're looking for and help us go find the right experts and the right people to bring you the best content we can and that you've become accustomed to here at the Hacker News. So on behalf of myself and the team behind your favorite website, the Hacker News, have a great rest of your day. Thanks to our friends over at Sentra. Thanks to Benny for being here. And most importantly, everyone, stay cyber safe.